Hello everyone. We're going to talk about graphing linear inequalities in two variables. And really, there's two main things that I think you need to conceptualize and understand in doing this. First, just treat the inequality like an equation. Secondly, you have to remember the main thing that will get you on this is whenever you multiply or divide across the inequality symbol, you have to flip the inequality. So what was less than becomes greater than, and vice versa. So we have to flip that inequality anytime we multiply or divide by a negative number going across. So we've already talked about inequalities, but now we're going to actually graph a linear inequality. So let's look at an example. We're given 3x minus 7y is less than or equal to a negative 6. So what matters here is how you like to graph. If you want it in standard form like this, then that's what you can do. You can use the intercepts to be able to graph. If you like it in y equals mx plus b form, slope intercept form, then you turn around and rewrite it. So for our example, what I chose to do is I chose to rewrite our original inequality in the form of slope intercept, y equals mx plus b. So I have rewritten my equation, and in doing so I had to divide by a negative 7. I am dividing by a negative going across that inequality. So I had to divide by negative 7 here and here and here. So that means that I have to flip that inequality symbol. And this is what I end up with. Y is greater than or equal to 3/7 x plus 6/7. This is simply my original equation written in slope-intercept form. What I will turn around and do then though is I'm going to graph the related equation. I'm just going to act like that inequality symbol isn't there and just put an equal sign. And this goes back to what we already know. This looks familiar, this is comfortable. So then I will graph my linear inequation. And over here on the right, there's my linear equation graphed. But I still have this. It's still an inequality. This is where this comes in, is that I'm going to pick a point on one side or the other side of my line. So I have those choices. Pick the easiest point. My recommendation is that you always use the origin. Math using zeros is easy. The only time you do not use the origin is if your line goes through the origin, if it is part of your line. You never pick a point that is on the line. So in this case, my line does not go through the origin, so that is going to be what I evaluate my inequality at. So I chose 0, 0, the origin. And I'm going to plug that value for x and that value for y into my inequality. If in evaluating I get a true statement, then I will shade in everything on the side of 0, 0, the coordinate that I picked. If I get a statement that is not true, then I will shade in the opposite side. So whenever I plug in those values, 0, 0, so I plug in 0 and 0, y value, x value. Whenever I plug those in and solve, I end up with 0 is greater than or equal to 6/7. That is not a true statement. 0 is not greater than 6/7. So what that means is that I need to shade in on the other side of the point, the coordinate that I selected. This is what I chose right here, but it was not a true statement. So what that means is that I need to shade in here. And this is what this inequality, linear inequality, says, is that it contains all the points, what we could say, above the line. And that is it. You should be familiar, because we've already gone over our linear equations and how to graph. You need to First, rewrite your inequality, and I recommend, for sake of not being confused by the inequality symbol, is that you choose to use y equals mx plus b form, slope-intercept form, to graph. Once you have it rewritten in slope-intercept form and you've ensured that if you need it to flip the inequality symbol because you multiplied or divided by a negative number, once you have it written like that, then you're going to treat it like an equation. Graph the related equation. And once you have it graphed, then you are simply going to pick a point on your graph. Again, I recommend 0, 0 or another very simple coordinate to evaluate that. When you evaluate your inequality, you're going to see if you end up with a true statement or an untrue statement. If true, then shade on the side that that coordinate was selected from. Again, I chose 0, 0. So if I had a true statement at the end, I would have shaded down here. But I did not end up with a true statement. Therefore, I shade on the opposite side. All right, so let us look at an actual example. So here is my example. So I'm given this, and the first thing that I need to do is I need to rewrite my problem. So I have a negative 8y greater than or equal to a negative x minus 4. Notice I'm going to, I have a negative there. So guess what I'm going to end up doing? I'm going to end up dividing by a negative. That causes my inequality symbol to flip. It does not flip if there's not a negative. This is the only thing that you got to pay attention to when rewriting. Y is less than or equal to 1/8 x plus 1/2. This right here is my y-intercept, and this right here, 1/8, is my slope. I can now graph that inequality. And I can tell from just the inequality what's given is that it will not go through the origin, so that's good. So here we go. Here's our problem. So I'm going to graph, click on to enlarge graph, and then I'm at my pointer now. I want to graph a line. So my y-intercept is 1/2, so that means I'm going to hit here, and then I have my slope. My slope is the change in y's over the change in x's. They're both positive, so it means up 1. So up 1 and over 8. The slope is you deal with your y's first and then your x's. Both directions I went in positive. 1 was positive and 8 was positive. So there's my line. And now I look at being able to fill in. I'm going to fill in down here or up here. Okay. And with that, and if I have to redo it, I'll redo it. Okay. With that, I need to evaluate. After I have it graphed, I can look at it and say, okay, 0, 0, the origin is not in there. And that's the point I choose. I could choose any other point, but the math is easy with that. Again, this is x and this is y for my coordinates. So I end up with 0 is less than or equal to, well, 1/8 times 0 is 0, so 0 is less than or equal to 1/2. Yes, that is a true statement. True statement. So therefore I'm going to shade on the side of the point or coordinate I selected, which was 0, 0. So let's see if I can pull that back up here. So I'm going to shade on the side where my origin was, and I'm going to click there and I'll shade it. And I think that we have that. There we go. So let's check our answer. Yay. We got it. This is just, it's almost like a series of 3 steps. One of them goes away if you do not have a negative. And honestly, I hope that you have that. I hope that you've seen this, is that as soon as you look at your problem, and if you're going to end up with a negative term that has y in it, such as just a negative y or a negative 8y, if you have a negative sign with that y, you're going to end up dividing by negative. Your inequality symbol is going to flip. All right, guys, that is graphing linear inequalities. Let me reiterate something. If you do not have a negative with your y, you do not have to flip the inequality. Okay, please watch your publisher's videos. Critically think and structure your work. This is scaffolding. We've already covered this, and especially flipping the inequality symbols. We were just graphing on a number line with our inequalities before. Now we're graphing on the coordinate plane, two variables. So, critically think and structure your homework, and good luck on the rest of your homework problems.